Welcome to Deltek's Gov Conversations. I'm Carrie Webster, Director of Federal Information Solutions at Deltek. I'm joined today by Jen Sokol, Principal Analyst in our Federal Research Organization. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 federal opportunities in the architecture, engineering, and construction space for FY15. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Carrie.
We recently discussed the top 20 unrestricted federal opportunities for FY15, in which the value was the highest in the last 5 years. Is the same true for architecture, engineering, and construction opportunities in FY15?
Unfortunately, no. What we're seeing is a decrease from fiscal year 14, our top 10 federal AEC opportunities of about 25%. So the total combined ceiling value for the top 10 AEC opportunities is $9 billion. Now this should be tempered by understanding that within those top 10 opportunities, we have 3 opportunities that have ceiling values greater than $1 billion, and then we have 2 additional opportunities that fall just below that $1 billion threshold. And so there are big opportunities out there, they just aren't multi-billion dollar opportunities.
Are there any other differences between the opportunities in this year's top 10 list versus last year's?
There are. One of the areas that is interesting is the shift between defense AEC opportunities and civilian AEC opportunities. If you were to review last year's list, you would find that all of the top 10 federal AEC opportunities were associated with defense. Now this year, over half of the value is associated with the civilian agencies, so that's definitely a shift for us. Another thing to be aware of is that with our architecture, engineering, and construction opportunities, you know that the federal AEC market is small business friendly. It's one of the top areas for spending with small businesses. And this year, for our top 10 AEC opportunities, we have a mix of full and open competition, partial set-asides, and then 100% small business set-asides, including a really large opportunity out of the Air Force that comes in at about $930 million for regional engineering and construction. And we also have a 100% hub zone set aside out of the Navy for a multiple award construction contract, a MAC, for various locations in the Guam region. And that ceiling value on that is about $400 million.
Is there any correlation between the decline in the AEC opportunities this year and the AEC market as a whole?
I would say yes. I would say that this decline mirrors what we're seeing both in terms of federal AEC spending as well as the federal AEC budget. The federal AEC spending, just so you know, there was a peak in fiscal year 2010. We had about $64 billion in reported spending for AEC. And that was spurred primarily through the Stimulus Act. And then we saw a steady decline in reported spending for AEC. And that resulted in a negative 21% compound annual growth rate. So it has shrunk with reported spending coming in fiscal year 13 at about $32 billion. Now, pair that with what we see in the budget, and for fiscal year 15, the President's contractor addressable budget for the AEC market is $27.7 billion. And this is less than both the fiscal year 13 actual for AEC and the fiscal year 14 estimated for AEC. So we see this decline, but I think it's worth noting that in Deltek's 35th Annual Clarity Report for Architecture and Engineering, that's a report, and this year they had over 350 companies participate in the survey, and they're optimistic about growth in the market. So they're seeing, expecting growth in the coming year for the architecture and engineering market as a whole. And what's specific to federal companies is that when we looked at the market segments where they expect the most growth, commercial market was number 1, but that was followed by the public infrastructure market. So a little bit of good news perhaps to temper the decline in budget and spending in the federal market.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Carrie.